Hello everyone, this is David, and tonight's movie that we watched is Carnosaur 3: Primal Species. Now, this is a continuation of the Carnosaur franchise, if you will. However, like the previous two installments, they really don't have much to do with each other, but this one makes a little bit more inroads into connecting all of the Carnosaur movies together in a very roundabout fashion. So, the plague from the first one is not mentioned, nor is the events of the second movie. However, there is an allusion to some sort of mad scientist who created the Carnosaurs, and that now they're being used for military research. So, the Carnosaurs in this one are interesting. Again, two Velociraptors and a Tyrannosaurus. There's a limited number of Carnosaurs this time, but they got a couple advantages, more so than they did before. Mostly, they are apparently hermaphroditic, as the female Tyrannosaurus can reproduce without a male. And secondly, they are capable of regenerating from any wounds they receive, even from like a death-like state. So that's pretty impressive, and not quite as powerful as Reptilicus, but still pretty impressive. Also, they've gained the partial invulnerability to bullets. And I say partial because you can still shoot them down, but it is not nearly as easy as it used to be. They're far more bulletproof than they used to be. In Carnosaur 1, the sheriff killed the Deinonychus with a shotgun, just shooting it once. It didn't have to drop a hail of bullets or automatic weapon fire into it. It just shot it once, went down. It wasn't quite dead, but still. So, I mean, this sort of follows in line with a lot of monsters as they either go on or just become casually immune to bullets, because if you're vulnerable to bullets, you're basically vulnerable to pretty much everyone. Which, I mean, it's a reasonable vulnerability, but even so. So let's get on to the movie. So this one's going to be, I think, kind of short, because the events of this movie are, well, it's a kind of short film to begin with, and there's a lot of stuff that just really isn't relevant. So it starts off with this military convoy transporting something, and these terrorists attack, and they kill all the military personnel, and they steal the convoy. It cuts back to these Marines doing this training exercise with they're basically playing a training game where one group is hostages and terrorists, and the other is the Marines going in to prevent them, like to rescue the hostages, basically, in a sort of simulation. And they don't tell you this until it's over, so you're like, okay, what's going on now? It looks like they're infiltrating some sort of crazy oil rig base in the desert. No, it's just an exercise, just training exercise. So they get new orders, and they're going out to figure out where these class 4 materials that they have, and they can't tell them what they are, but they're dinosaurs. You know they're dinosaurs. You got to find out where they are, where they're going, and they managed to track them down. The criminals, or terrorists, as you will, bring them to like this warehouse district on like the docks. They thought they were getting plutonium for nuclear weapons, but in fact they were not. They were misled, because even at the highest levels of security, what was being transported was not being told to anybody. So they open it up. The head terrorist is kind of like a cool looking guy. He's kind of got like a jacket. He kind of reminds me of James Woods' character from John Carpenter's Vampires. Kind of like that, except he's got like black pants instead of blue jeans. Like that kind of look. So that's kind of interesting. But he opens it up, finds out they're dinosaurs. He's pissed. Dinosaurs wake up. They kill everybody. One of them gets away, though, and the cops find him. Cops go in. Dinosaurs kill all the cops. Also, as a note, they shut the door. Like, so when they go in, originally the terrorists opened up the door, the dinosaurs were inside in kind of like a sleep-like state, but they wake them up. Dinosaurs kill all the terrorists. But then, when the cops get there, the doors to the truck that the Carnosaurs were in, they're closed again, and they're still inside there. So, who closed the door? I don't know. Never mentioned. Apparently the Carnosaurs were just that kind of ambush predator. They're smart enough to close the door, so when you look in, they get you. And the Tyrannosaurus somehow sneaks up on them and kills them. kills the cops too. I don't know how the Tyrannosaurus sneaks up on you inside of a warehouse that's largely empty. There's not a lot in this warehouse. It's not like boxes to hide behind. Well, not in this warehouse, but other ones. So at this point, terrorists are dead. The cops that showed up to find it are dead. Military shows up. So the military gets there, and they find the same place that the other two groups found. And there's just people hacked up all over the place. And they get this reading on this very aliens-like sonar or radar that they have. They see movement. It's reading way below room, like normal human temperature. So it's really weird. So they find a dead body. They get attacked by something. I think a couple of members get killed. Turns out there's not. They pull out of there. They find out, oh, there's dinosaurs. And the scientist lady, I think her name's Dr. Hodges, explains to them about the project that the dinosaurs were developed under, and their origins, and how the scientists created them years ago, and they've been kind of passed down from different Black Ops project to different Black Ops project, and they're studying the dinosaurs for their like crazy properties that they have. Now, that's an interesting take on it. I mean, weaponizing Carnosaurs, it's like basically they've become the aliens from Alien, where the company, like the government's just trying to weaponize them somehow. Okay, fair enough. Can't kill the Carnosaurs. So they go back in, and they get a bunch of Marines, and they set up a trap, and there's like, they start setting things up, and now the doctor's with the army guys, and they get to the site, and they immediately, the commanding officer and the doctor immediately get into an argument, and they go immediately back to the general that was giving them this stuff anyway, and argue about it again. They literally just left, and they're already back. Meanwhile, all the grunts are setting up the area for a trap. There's an arm wrestling contest that happens between Polchek, who's played by Rick Dean, who's the same guy that played Monk in the last movie, so that's kind of funny. They brought him back because his character Monk was very sarcastic, and they were just like, you know what you're doing as Monk? Just take that to 11. So Polchek's this complete, like, wise ass who just fucking jokes about everything always. Just like, whether or not it makes sense, they could be getting murdered. His friends could be getting murdered in front of him, and he'd still be cracking jokes about the situation at hand. So that's a thing, and there's an arm wrestling contest between Polchek, who's Monk from the previous movie, and this army lady or army woman who's like, oh man, I heard you don't like taking orders from women. Why don't you see, like, basically like put up your dukes, and they arm wrestle, and Polchek beats her, but it doesn't really matter because she's left-handed and they were wrestling right-handed, so apparently she's way stronger in her left hand. I would think you'd be about equally strong unless you like really worked out one hand more than the other, but I'm not an arm wrestler, so I don't know. Perhaps there is some ring of truth there. I would think they'd be more or less equally strong, but I mean, I know you have a dominant hand, and that's a little bit better, but yeah, it doesn't. Ultimately, that serves no purpose. So they set up the trap, and the Carnosaurs attack, and they manage to capture one of them, and they're examining it, and the Carnosaur regenerates, and the other raptor and the Tyrannosaurus sneak up on them somehow. They had no sentries posted outside, and the Tyrannosaurus kills somebody by biting its head off, because that's the way it works. Yeah, it turns out Tyrannosauruses like to bite off heads. Also, they can shake people and make their limbs fall off. I thought that was pretty interesting. That's a fallback from Carnosaur 2. That shot gets reused a bunch of times, though. I did not know people were basically like little action figures that you could shake apart, but apparently they are. Sure, okay. So now they're like, what the fuck are we gonna do? These things, we can't stop them. So she's like, well, can they swim? And he's like, or the doctor's like, no, they're not designed to swim, so I don't think they can. So they're like, okay, so we're gonna get them on this boat and sail them out into the middle of the ocean, and then sink the boat. I'm like, okay, that's not a bad idea, but how are you gonna get them on the boat? Well, they get them on the boat the best way they could, and that is with a cut. They literally, this is what happens. They go, all right, we're going to get them on the boat. Let's go do it. And it cuts, and they're like, man, sure is a good thing we got them all on that boat. And they sail the boat out into the ocean. I don't know how you get 2 raptors and a Tyrannosaurus onto a boat. I don't know how you get a Tyrannosaurus below decks. Maybe if it was some sort of cargo thing, you could open up the cargo bay and it could like fall in. But for the most part, I've been on boats before, like big boats. They're not designed for space. They're designed to be as efficient in terms of space as possible. If you are too tall, too bad. You will not have fun on a boat. So that's a thing. I don't know how the Tyrannosaurus got below decks, but apparently it did. So this all culminates very quickly. Suffice to say, most of the characters get killed off at this point. The dinosaurs pick them all off. They find out that the Tyrannosaurus built its nest. Polchek kills all the eggs. Tyrannosaurus comes out, bites his head off. Then they throw a grenade in its mouth, blows its head off, blows the Tyrannosaurus' head off. So I mean, it's like irony for you because you bite off heads, so now your head is blown off. And then they had already rigged the ship to explode, so the commander and the doctor lady, who are now like romantically involved. Well, maybe not romantically involved, but like, you know, that kind of the guy and the girl get together kind of in the end thing. That's what happens, and they jump off the boat, even though it's in the middle of the ocean, and the day is saved as the boat explodes, killing what's left of the Carnosaurs. So that's Carnosaur 3 Primal Species. I'm sorry if this isn't as funny as it could have been. There's just not as many just complete funny moments, if you will. Like, there's funny moments, but they're not like funny because like something completely moronic or insane happened. It's more like Rick Dean is just being a complete jackass, and it's kind of funny. Or like you look at the Carnosaur and be like, that doesn't make any sense. It's obviously a guy in a suit. The way they move, and they just kind of shuffle around. But it isn't as funny as like from like a complete insane standpoint as the other Carnosaur movies are. And it's not as watchable as Carnosaur 2. It kind of runs the middle road. It's very understandable. It's very straightforward. It doesn't blatantly rip off any movies as far as I'm aware. Not really. I wouldn't consider it a blatant rip-off, at least. If it is ripping off a movie, it's by no means obvious. And but that being said, the plot is kind of like completely half-assed, because it's like, oh, we gotta get these dinosaurs on this boat, and then they just do it off camera, and you're left scratching your head going, how? How did you do that? Why are the Carnosaurs staying in this set of buildings? There's no reason for them to. They don't need to. Do they just like that place? I guess. The characters are not particularly well developed. About the only one you'll remember is Polchek, because of his incredibly snarky attitude. Other than that, the rest of the characters are largely forgettable. You'll remember the Doctor only because she's the only non-military person there. Yeah, but so this movie's kind of confusing. Not really confusing, but like, it's just not as fun as Carnosaur 2, and it's not as batshit completely insane as Carnosaur 1. So it kind of is the middle road, and because of that, it doesn't stand out and just doesn't feel as good or as distinctive. And that's really unfortunate, because this closes out the Carnosaur series, but it doesn't. There's one more movie we gotta talk about. And that movie's Raptor. And I guess that's coming up next because of popular demand. Alright, folks. Good night.